2 days after my daughter's wedding, my life should have been calm. Instead, I'm sitting here telling you how my brand new son-in-law tried to steal my house. Yes, my house. The one I built with my own 2 hands. But before we get into betrayal, heartbreak, and a man who showed up at a notary like he was delivering pizza, let me pause. Hit that subscribe button. It's free. Unlike weddings. Weddings are like financial black holes. You throw money in and watch it disappear forever. All right, back to the story. The wedding was beautiful. Painfully beautiful. The kind of day you'd frame and hang on the wall. But also the kind of day that makes your back ache from smiling too much. Golden Oaks Hall gleamed under chandeliers big enough to crush a horse if they ever fell. White roses lined the arch, petals scattered across the aisle, and the faint perfume of lilies hung in the air like a blessing, or maybe like a bill I'd forgotten to pay. And then there was Lillian, my little girl, my only daughter, my sunshine since the day her mother passed. She looked radiant, glowing in her wedding gown, pearls in her hair, eyes shining like she was about to step into the life she always dreamed of. Me? I was a proud father in a suit, so tight I wondered if it came with free CPR coupon. My shoes pinched like they were designed by medieval torturers, but I kept walking, knees cracking, sweat prickling my neck. I still carried her down the aisle like the luckiest man alive. At the feast, the air buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses. The string quartet in the corner was trying to make Canon in D sound romantic for the 17th time that night. Guests circled tables pile high with roast duck, garlic potatoes, and more champagne than sense. Marty, my old friend, was already 2 glasses deep and telling his favorite joke, the same one he told at my wedding 40 years ago. People laughed like they hadn't heard 100 times, and I had to admit, so did I. Everything was perfect. Almost. I sat at the head table, beaming at my daughter as she leaned against her new husband, Philip, my son-in-law. Now, don't get me wrong. The boy looked the part. Sharp suit, charming smile, handshake firm enough to make a politician jealous. Lillian once told me he was ambitious. That's how she put it. Ambitious. And ambition is fine, until ambition starts looking at your house like it's a winning lottery ticket. Philip raised his wine glass and smiled at the guests, but when his eyes slid over to me, I swear there was something behind them. Not love, not gratitude. Something else, something colder. The kind of look a man gives when he's already measuring what belongs to you. The toast began. Marty got up first, waving his champagne like conductor's baton. To love, to laughter, and to Lillian finding someone who puts up with her shopping habits. The crowd roared with laughter, and Lillian blushed scarlet. Then the maid of honor, teary-eyed, poured her heart out about friendship late-night talks and the kind of secrets only best friends share. I pretended to rub my nose, but really, I was dabbing away a tear. Finally, Philip rose. He straightened his tie like a man preparing for a job interview. His voice slid across the hall, smooth as honey, confident as a preacher's on Sunday. My friends, my family, he said, pausing just long enough to reel everyone in. Today, I not only married the love of my life, but I also join a family I deeply respect. A family that has given me more than I ever dreamed of. A home, a future. The hall erupted in applause. Lillian's eyes shone as she looked at him. But me? My fork hovered in midair. Did he really just say a home with that look in his eye? Everyone clapped louder. I clapped too, though slower. My palms met, but my stomach twisted. Later in the evening, while I was heading toward the dessert table to secure a slice of triple-layer chocolate cake, the one I paid too much for, I overheard him. Philip. He was leaning close to one of his buddies, voice low, but not low enough. Too big for one old man. Prime location. Imagine what we could do with it. I froze. My cake fork paused midair. He wasn't talking about a home in general. He was talking about my house. The house I built with sweat and cracked hands 20 years ago. The house where I raised my daughter, patched her scraped knees, and held her hand the night her mother died. That house wasn't just wood and nails. It was my life, my memories, my everything. And this slick young man was talking about it like it was already his. I didn't confront him. Not yet. It was my daughter's wedding night. I wasn't about to turn it into a crime scene. Instead, I forced a smile, collected my cake, and walked back to the table. But my chest burned. When I raised my glass for the final toast of the evening, I caught him staring at me again. This time, his smile didn't reach his eyes. And in that moment, I knew something was coming, something dangerous, and I would be ready. 2 days after the wedding, I should have been napping in my recliner, eating leftover cake straight from the fridge, and maybe watching a rerun of Columbo. Instead, I was sitting in Golden Oaks, a restaurant so fancy the menus didn't even have prices. And you know what that means? It means the prices are high enough to make your mortgage sweat. Dad, you'll love this place. Lillian said as the waiter pulled out my chair like I was the King of England. Philip and I come here all the time. Oh, wonderful. My daughter was marrying a man who thought $15 appetizers were all the time. The waiter set down a bread basket the size of my hat. Artisan bread, they called it. I picked up a piece, sniffed it, and thought artisan just means small, hard, and twice as expensive. Enjoy, Philip said, lifting his wine glass with that smooth smile of his. His cufflinks gleamed in the dim light, catching the glow of the candle on the table. I sipped my water. Sparkling, of course. Tasted like someone had dunked a battery in it. The three of us sat in an intimate booth, tucked away from the bustle of other diners. The room buzzed with low laughter, forks clinking against china. Somewhere, a piano played softly, the kind of music that makes you feel guilty if you chew too loud. So, Dad, Philip began, leaning forward. Now that the wedding chaos is behind us, I think it's time we talk about the future. Oh, nothing good ever follows that sentence. What about it? I asked, tearing off a chunk of bread and nearly chipping a tooth in the process. Philip glanced at Lillian, then back at me. His smile never wavered, but there was a flicker in his eyes. Something sharp, something calculated. Lillian and I, he said, we want to start our family properly. Our own place, space to grow. My fork paused over the salad I didn't want. I knew where this was going. The iceberg lettuce suddenly felt like sandpaper on my tongue. Your house would be perfect for a young couple, Philip continued, as casually as if he were asking me to pass the salt. The words hit me like ice water. My chest tightened. My fork clattered against the plate. My house, I repeated, voice steady though my fingers clenched the table edge. Philip nodded, swirling his wine like some kind of aristocrat. It's just practical. You're alone in such a large place. And at your age, wouldn't you prefer something more manageable? At my age, 68 wasn't ancient. I could still climb stairs, mow the lawn, even change a tire if I had to. But the way he said it, like I had one foot in the grave and the other on a banana peel, made the champagne flute tremble in my grip. I glanced at Lillian. She shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting between us. Her wedding ring caught the candlelight, glittering like a shackle. Philip pressed on, his tone smooth, persuasive. Think about it. Your grandchildren playing in those rooms someday. Laughter in the hallways again. We'd take such good care of it. I set down my fork. The taste of wedding cake still lingered in my memory. Sweet then, but bitter now. That house, I said quietly, isn't just a building. I built it myself 20 years ago. Every beam, every nail, every brick has sweat and memory in it. That's where Lillian grew up, where her mother and I, my voice faltered. The restaurant seemed to close in, the laughter around us fading into a dull roar. I didn't cry often, not in front of people, but her absence pressed against me then, as sharp as it had been the day she left. Philip nodded sympathetically, but the glimmer in his eyes didn't match his tone. Of course, but think how happy it would make Lillian. How secure. The waiter arrived just then with entrees. Perfect timing, as if Golden Oaks had a sixth sense for awkward conversations. He slid a plate in front of me, steak so small it looked like it belonged in a dollhouse. I poked it with my fork. This steak cost more than my first car. I muttered. Lillian giggled nervously. Philip didn't. Dad, she said softly, maybe Philip has a point. The house is so big for just you. You've been talking about retiring, about slowing down. Her words cut deeper than Philip's. Because they weren't calculated. They were innocent, genuine. She thought she was helping. I looked at her, my little girl, the one I'd tucked into bed every night, the one who cried into my shirt the day her mother passed. And now she sat there, caught between love and loyalty, torn without even realizing it. I forced a smile. We'll talk about it, I said. Philip leaned back, satisfied, sipping his wine like a man who just won a battle. But in my chest, a storm was brewing. This wasn't just ambition. This wasn't just a young man trying to start fresh. This was something darker. And I wasn't about to let him take the one thing I had left. The house was too quiet. After Golden Oaks, I came home, loosened my tie, and dropped into the recliner with a sigh that seemed to echo off the walls. The lamp in the corner flickered, casting shadows that stretched long and lonely across the room. Once, this house had been full of sound. Lillian's laughter bouncing down the hallway, her footsteps pounding up the stairs when she was late for school, her mother humming in the kitchen while the smell of cinnamon rolls filled the air. Now it was just me, an old man in a big house, the ticket clock my only company, and Philip's words rattling in my skull. At your age, wouldn't you prefer something more manageable? I closed my eyes, but rest didn't come. Instead, memories did. I was 38 again, standing in the yard with a hammer in one hand and a blueprint in the other. The sun beat down, sweat dripping into my eyes, but I grinned like a fool. This is going to be our home, I told her. She laughed, brushing sawdust from her hair. Our home, huh? You mean the pile of what you've been staring at all week? I kissed her forehead. Trust me, give me 6 months. It took 9. 9 months of calloused hands, sore muscles, and more than a few curse words when boards didn't line up the way they should. But I built it, with her by my side, handing me nails, steadying beams, painting walls when the baby was asleep. And when it was done, we stood at the doorway, holding hands, staring at the house that was finally ours. She whispered, "This is where we'll raise her." And we did. The memories shifted. Lillian was 5, standing on a chair in the kitchen, face smeared with flour as she tried to help me bake cookies. Half the dough ended up on the floor. The other half mysteriously disappeared into her mouth. "Daddy," she said, grinning with chocolate on her teeth, "I think we need more sugar." I laughed then. I laughed so hard my stomach hurt. Now, in the silence of my living room, the memory burned. Sweet, but sharp. That was what Philip wanted. Not just a roof. Not just walls. He wanted my life. The place where laughter, love, and tears had soaked into floorboards. The house creaked in the night. The kind of creak that makes you wonder if it's settling or if it's warning you. I sat there listening, feeling the weight of every memory pressing down. Could he take it from me? Legally, maybe not. But emotionally, if Lillian begged, if she said it would make her happy, how long could I hold out? I rubbed my face, palms rough against my skin. My chest ached, not from age, but from fear. Fear of losing the last thing I had left of her. Her. I glanced at the framed photo on the mantel. My wife. Her smile frozen in time, eyes full of warmth I hadn't seen in 20 years. "Don't worry," I whispered to her. "I won't let him. I won't let anyone take what we built." But as the night dragged on, doubt gnawed at me. What if Philip was right? What if I was just an old man rattling around in a house too big for one? What if the memories I clung to were chains instead of anchors? I shook my head, angry at myself. No, this wasn't just about square footage. This was about legacy, about love, about everything we poured into these walls. I got up and walked the halls. My footsteps echoed in the dark, bouncing off family photos. Lillian in pigtails on her first day of school. Lillian at prom, dressed too long, tripping over the hem while I tried not to cry. Lillian in her graduation gown, grinning as she held her diploma. Every hallway was a museum of her life, our life, and Philip wanted to bulldoze it into a future. I stopped at her old room. The door was half open, just as she'd left it when she moved out. I pushed it open, the hinges groaning softly. The room smelled faintly of vanilla and old perfume. Posters still clung to the walls, bands she swore were the best ever at 16 and forgot about at 17. Her stuffed bear sat on the bed, one ear chewed from when the dog got too curious. I picked it up, ran my fingers over the worn fur, and for a moment I was back in time. "Daddy, the bear's name is Mr. Buttons. He guarded me at night. Now Mr. Buttons guarded an empty room." I sat on the edge of the bed, bare in my hands, and felt the weight of years pressing in, and the fear of what was coming. Outside, the wind rattled the shutters. The house groaned again, as if it knew it was under threat, as if it shared my unease. I whispered into the dark, "They won't take you, not while I'm breathing." But even as I said it, a shadow of doubt flickered, because sometimes The people you love most are the ones who make you surrender. The morning after my uneasy night began like any other. Coffee, creaky knees, and a newspaper I only half read. The house was quiet, but it wasn't peaceful. Every corner seemed to hum with tension, like the walls themselves were waiting for something. I sat at the kitchen table, staring into my mug as steam curled upward. My mind replayed Philip's words from Golden Oaks. At your age. The phrase clung to me like a stain I couldn't scrub out. That's when it came. Knock, knock, knock. 3 sharp raps on the door. Too confident, too official. Not the neighbor, not the mailman. I set down my mug. My stomach sank. Who the hell knocks this early? I muttered, pushing back from the table. The grim reaper finally tired of waiting. The knocks came again, harder this time. I opened the door, and there he was, Philip. Suit pressed, tie sharp, smile smug. Beside him stood a man in a gray blazer, leather briefcase tucked under one arm. He had the kind of face you forget instantly, except for the way his eyes flicked over you like he was already calculating your worth. Good morning, Dad, Philip said, voice dripping with cheer that didn't match his eyes. Hope we're not disturbing you. The notary adjusted his glasses and nodded politely. Good morning, sir. For a moment, I just stood there. My heart thudded, but my face stayed calm, not disturbing me. I said, I was just about to enjoy my quiet morning. But sure, come in and ruin it. Philip's smile didn't falter. The notary blinked, clearly unsure if I was joking. I was, sort of. They stepped inside. The notary's shoes clicked against a hardwood I'd laid with my own hands 20 years ago. His eyes darted around the living room, taking the framed photos, the worn recliner, the walls painted by my wife before her hair fell out from chemo. I hated that look, the look of a man who saw a house as numbers on a page, not a life lived inside it. We sat in the living room. I lowered myself into my recliner. Philip and the notary took the couch. The notary set his briefcase on the coffee table, like he was presenting a coffin. Philip leaned forward, fingers laced together, expression rehearsed. Dad, he began, we've given this a lot of thought. Lillian, and I agree it's time you moved into something smaller, more manageable. We found a lovely retirement community just 20 minutes from here. They've got everything, gardens, activities, even bingo nights. He said it like he was offering me a vacation. I kept my face blank. And the house. Philip's smile widened. We'd take it over, of course. Make it our family home. Continue the legacy. Continue the legacy. Those words soured in my ears. The notary cleared his throat and opened the briefcase. Papers rustled. He slid a document across the table toward me. Mr. Preston, he said formally, this is a preliminary agreement. Nothing binding yet, of course. But should you choose to transition into assisted living, this would transfer the deed to your son-in-law and daughter. All perfectly legal. Philip gave me that same polished grin. See? Simple. Seamless. No worries. I didn't touch the paper. I just stared at it. The black ink on white looked like vultures circling overhead. Finally, I looked up. That's very thoughtful of you, I said slowly. But before we sign anything, why don't we stop by the police station first? I think they'd be very interested in what I sent them about you, Philip. The room froze. The notary blinked. Philip's smile cracked, just for a fraction of a second. What? He asked, voice lower now. I leaned back in my recliner, folding my arms across my chest. Oh, didn't I mention? I've been keeping notes. About you. About your little financial habits. Let's just say the authorities might want a closer look. Philip's jaw tightened. His hands, still clasped, pressed together harder. The notary glanced between us, clearly regretting his career choices. Dad, Philip said evenly, there's no need for threats. We're family. Funny, I said. Family doesn't show up 2 days after a wedding with a notary, and a smile like a wolf in Sunday clothes. For a moment, silence hung thick. Then Philip chuckled, shaking his head as if I were a stubborn old man refusing to modernize. You're making this harder than it needs to be. I leaned forward, eyes locked on his. And you're making it easier than you think. Because every word you've just said confirms exactly what I suspected. You didn't marry my daughter for love. You married her for this house. Philip opened his mouth, but for once, no words came out. The notary shifted uncomfortably, clearing his throat. Perhaps We should reconvene another time. Yes, I said, standing, towering over both of them. Perhaps you should. They left. The door closed behind them with a thud that shook the walls. I stood there, heart pounding, fist clenched, staring at the empty hallway. They thought they could corner me. They thought I was weak, old, alone, but they had no idea what kind of fight I still had left in me. The house was silent again, but it didn't feel the same. After Philip and the notary left, the air seemed heavier, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. I sat back in the recliner, staring at the coffee table where the unsigned papers had rested. For a moment, I could still see them there, bold black ink like a stain on my life. My hands itched with the urge to tear them up, burn them, scatter the ashes into the wind. But I hadn't signed. That mattered. That meant the fight wasn't lost. Still, my chest ached. My thoughts churned like a storm I couldn't calm. He really thought he could just take it. I rubbed my temples. My daughter's face rose in my mind. Lillian's soft eyes, the way she looked between us at Golden Oaks, torn and uncertain. Did she know? Did she understand what Philip was really after? Or was she blinded by the idea of a future, of love, of children in this house? And if she asked me, begged me, could I say no? The thought cut deeper than anything Philip had said. I stood and began to pace. My footsteps echoed down the hallway, past the photos, past the shadows of my life. I built this house, I whispered, voice rough, with my hands, with her, with every nail and bore and brick. My wife's face flashed before me, the day we finished painting the nursery. She'd sat down on the floor, paint smeared on her cheek, and laughed until tears rolled down. It's crooked, she said, pointing at the trim I'd messed up. But it's ours, not Philip's, not anyone else's. I went into my study and pulled out the old oak desk drawer. Inside was a folder, worn at the edges, filled with papers I hadn't looked at in years. Tax records, receipts from the lumberyard, the original deed, carefully folded. I spread them out across the desk, my hands shaking just a little. If Philip wanted a fight, he'd get one, but fear still gnawed at me. Could I actually stand against him? He was young, slick, educated in ways I wasn't. He had charm, manipulation, the ability to twist words. I had memories, calluses, stubbornness. I let out a dry laugh. Not exactly a fair fight, huh? Still, I'd fought unfair fights before. Raising a daughter alone after her mother died. Surviving nights when grief pressed down so heavy I thought I'd suffocate. This wasn't new. This was just another battle. And I wasn't about to lose. The clock on the wall ticked louder, each second thudding like a hammer. I leaned back in the chair, staring at the ceiling, and let the thoughts come. Step 1, protect the house legally. A lawyer. I'd need one. Someone sharp. Someone who could smell Philip's game from a mile away. Step 2, protect Lillian. Harder, because she loved him or thought she did. And if I went after him, she might think I was going after her. My stomach twisted. I whispered into the empty room, God, help me. How do I fight him without losing her? No answer came, just the steady tick of the clock. Finally, I stood and opened the window. The late afternoon light spilled in, warm and golden, painting the floor with streaks of fire. Outside, the yard stretched wide, the garden overgrown, but still alive. I saw flashes of memory. Lillian running to the grass with a kite, my wife planting roses along the fence, me mowing the lawn with sweat dripping into my eyes while they laughed at me from the porch. This wasn't just a house. This was my life, and I wasn't about to hand it over. I clenched the window frame, knuckles white. Philip, I muttered, you think you've already won, but you don't know me. You don't know what I buried in these walls. The wind stirred, rattling the shutters, almost like the house itself agreed. And for the first time since Golden Oaks, I felt it. Resolve. Hard, cold, steady. I wasn't going down without a fight. The wedding ring on my finger gleamed in the dim light of our apartment, but I couldn't stop twisting it. Round and round, the metal biting into my skin, a nervous habit I couldn't break. I should have felt happy. Newly married, a fresh start, a future ahead of us. That's what everyone said. That's what I told myself. But my heart was heavy, because I couldn't shake the look on my father's face at Golden Oaks, or the way his voice had sounded, level but trembling beneath, when Philip mentioned the house. Lillian, Philip called from the kitchen. His tone was smooth, casual, as though nothing was wrong. We should talk about visiting your dad again this week. If we can ease him into the idea, he won't fight it so much. I froze. My ring spun faster. Ease him into it. Like my father was some stubborn child refusing medicine. Maybe, I said softly. Philip appeared in the doorway, leaning against the frame, wine glass in hand. His smile was warm, but his eyes glinted sharp. You know it's the best thing for him. He's alone in that house, rattling around in all those rooms. It's not safe. He needs to be somewhere with care, with people. Don't you want him comfortable? The words were reasonable. Too reasonable. Like lines from a script. And I hated that they almost made sense. I turned my face away, staring at the small frame photo on our shelf. Me and Dad, years ago at the county fair. I was maybe 10, cotton candy in one hand, his big callous hand holding mine in the other. He wore that silly baseball cap he refused to throw away, and his smile was so wide it still warmed me now. Of course I want him comfortable, I whispered. But the house. Philip's voice cut in, gentle but firm. The house isn't him, Lillian. It's just wood and stone. You don't have to let him chain himself to the past. But it wasn't just wood and stone. I remembered birthdays in that living room. Mom's laughter echoing down the hall. Dad's goofy jokes at dinner. The smell of cookies on cold winter nights. That house wasn't just shelter. It was everything. And I couldn't bear the thought of being the reason Dad lost it. Later that night, when Philip had gone to bed, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. Tears pricked my eyes, and I let them fall, silent, soaking the pillow. Was I betraying my father? Or was I betraying my husband if I didn't support him? The ring twisted again, tighter, until my finger ached. I closed my eyes and saw Dad's hands. Rough, scarred, steady. The same hands that had carried me when I was little, that had patched my scraped knees, that had built the very walls Philip wanted to claim. I couldn't imagine telling him he had to leave. I couldn't imagine looking into his eyes while I signed away the last piece of Mom he had left. But then I heard Philip's voice in my mind, calm, persuasive. It's for the best. He'll be happier, safer, and we'll build our family there. My chest tightened, because part of me wanted that too. Children, a family, the sound of laughter in those halls again. Not silence, not loneliness, but at what cost? At the cost of breaking my father's heart? I buried my face in my hands, sobbing quietly so Philip wouldn't hear. My heart felt split down the middle, torn between the man who raised me and the man I'd chosen to marry. Love and loyalty, both pulling, both demanding. And no matter what choice I made, someone would be shattered. I'd always thought of myself as a builder, not a detective. My hands knew wood and nails, not paperwork and secrets. But after Philip's visit with that notary, something in me shifted. If he wanted to fight, I needed ammunition. And that meant digging. The first clue wasn't anything dramatic. Just a slip of paper I found while cleaning up after their little ambush. A business card, tucked under the notary's folder. Philip must have dropped it without noticing. It read, Caldwell Financial Consulting. I frowned at the name. I'd never heard of it. The address was in the city, some high-rise office I couldn't picture Philip belonging to. But curiosity bit down hard. That night, I sat at my old desktop computer. The machine wheezed to life like an asthmatic mule, and the internet took its sweet time loading. But when it finally did, I typed in the name, and what I found wasn't pretty. Caldwell Financial had gone bankrupt 3 years ago. Something about mismanagement of funds, client complaints, pending litigation. The article didn't name names, but one photo caught my eye, a group shot of staff, blurred but clear enough. And there he was, Philip, standing in the back, half smile on his face, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. My stomach dropped. So he had worked there, at a company that collapsed in scandal. I leaned back in the chair, the springs groaning. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe he'd just been an employee, not responsible. But my gut told me otherwise. Philip never did anything without a reason. And if he'd kept this from Lillian, what else was he hiding? The next morning, I pulled out the old Rolodex from my study. Most people use phones for everything now, but I still had names and numbers from decades back. I flipped through until I found one. Walter Briggs, retired cop, old friend from the days I coached Little League, back when our daughters played on the same team. Walter had always been good at sniffing out trouble. I dialed his number. The line crackled. Then a familiar gravelly voice answered. Briggs. Walter, it's Preston. Preston. His voice warmed. Damn, it's been years. How's life treating you? I hesitated. Complicated. Listen, I need a favor. It's about my son-in-law. There was a pause. Go on. I explained what I'd found. Caldwell Financial, the bankruptcy, Philip's photo in the article. Walter listened without interrupting. When I finished, he gave a low whistle. Sounds like a mess. I'll see what I can dig up. You know I've still got a few buddies and records. Appreciate it. I said, Preston, you sure you want to know? I closed my eyes, seeing Lillian's face. I don't have a choice. The rest of the day crawled by. I busied myself with chores, fixing a squeaky door hinge, sweeping the porch, trimming the overgrown hedge, but my mind never strayed far. By evening, Walter called back. You were right to be suspicious, he said grimly. Your son-in-law's name came up in connection to Caldwell. Nothing officially pinned on him, but there were complaints. A few clients claimed he promised investments that vanished. Nothing proven, but smoke like that usually means fire. My grip on the phone tightened. And Lillian? Does she know? I shook my head, though he couldn't see. Not a word. Walter sighed. Then you've got a problem, my friend. A big one. That night, sleep refused to come. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the old house creak and groan. Philip wasn't just greedy. He wasn't just after the house. He had a history, a shadow trailing behind him. And if I didn't stop him, that shadow would swallow my daughter whole. I'd built many things in my life. Walls, porches, furniture, even a swing in the backyard that creaked under Lillian's weight when she was little. But I'd never built a trap. Not until now. The morning after Walter's call, I sat at my oak desk with papers spread across every inch. Old deeds, receipts, the original blueprints of the house. And now, fresh documents too. Notes Walter had passed me about Caldwell Financial, and a list of lawyers in town I could trust. It felt strange, like I was back in my workshop, only instead of wood and nails, I was working with secrets and strategies. I muttered to myself, all right, Preston. If he wants a fight, give him one. Step one was simple. Protect the house legally. I found an attorney. Sharp, no nonsense. A woman named Claire Hammond. Walter had vouched for her. Her office smelled faintly of coffee and ink when I walked in. She looked up from her desk, mid-40s, glasses perched on her nose. Mr. Preston, Walter said you'd be coming. I handed her the deed, my fingers lingering on the paper. My son-in-law's after my house. He's slick, but I think he's hiding more than he lets on. I need to make sure he can't touch it. She flipped through the deed, nodded slowly. You're the sole owner. That helps. We can draft a living trust, protect it from being transferred without your explicit consent. And if you want, you could set it so it passes directly to your daughter only upon your death, not through him. Relief washed over me, but only for a second. Would that stop him? It would make it damn difficult, she said with a tight smile. And people like him don't like difficult. Step two was harder. Philip wasn't stupid. If I blocked him legally, he'd try another angle. Lillian, he'd twist her heart, make her plead with me, make her feel guilty until I caved. That was his real weapon. And that was where I needed to be careful. That night, I sat in the living room with a notepad. I wrote down everything Philip had said at Golden Oaks, every smirk, every word about practicality and at your age. Then I wrote down everything Walter had told me about Caldwell. Finally, I wrote one sentence at the bottom of the page. He thinks I'm weak. Let him keep thinking that. The trap couldn't just be legal. It had to be personal. Philip thrived on control. He wanted to corner me, to make me feel small, powerless. But what if I flipped the script? What if I let him think he was winning, right up until the moment he realized the ground had given way beneath him? I leaned back in my chair, a slow smile spreading across my face. It was the same smile I'd worn years ago when I taught Lillian to play chess. She hated losing, but when she finally beat me, she said, "Dad, you only let me win." I'd grinned. Of course, that's how you learn. You let someone think they're ahead, then you show them the trap. The house creaked around me, familiar, steady. It almost felt like it was listening. I whispered into the silence, We're not done yet, not by a long shot. The knock came just as the sun began a slow descent behind the trees, throwing long, copper shadows across the porch. 3 sharp raps, not the kind of knock you use when you're visiting family. No, this was the kind of knock a man gives when he's here to collect what he thinks he's owed. I knew before I even reached the door who it was. I opened it, and there he stood, Philip, gray suit, perfectly pressed, tie gleaming like polished steel, hair slicked back, not a strand out of place. And behind him, my daughter, my Lillian, her eyes downcast, lips pressed tight. Her hands twisted her purse strapped the way she used to twist her doll's hair when she was nervous as a child. "Good evening, Preston," Philip said smoothly, stepping forward like the threshold was already his. "We thought it best to talk here, at the house. After all," his smile widened, "this is the matter at hand, isn't it?" I let him in, not because he was welcome, but because battles are best fought on familiar ground. The living room felt smaller with him in it. He sat on the couch, elbow draped along the back like a man surveying his kingdom. Lillian sank beside him, close but not comfortable, as though she knew every inch of space between them was another inch of loyalty he demanded. I stayed in my chair. My chair. Solid oak, worn cushion, the place I'd read bedtime stories from. Tonight, it felt more like a command post. Philip cleared his throat. "Preston, we've danced around this long enough. You're rattling around in this house all alone. It's too big, too impractical. And frankly," he tilted his head, eyes glinting, "it's unsafe. At your age, a fall down these stairs could mean the end." Lillian shifted uncomfortably. Her eyes flickered to me, then to him, then back again. "Tell him, darling." Philip coaxed. His hand slid onto hers. "Tell your father what we've talked about." Lillian's lips parted, but no words came. Instead, her eyes welled, glassy with conflict. I held her gaze, said nothing. The silence pressed down heavier than his words. Philip finally leaned forward, his smile tightening. "We're offering you comfort, Preston, a future where you're cared for. And in return, we can give this house life again. Children, family gatherings, laughter in these halls. Isn't that better than empty rooms echoing with the past?" The clock ticked on the mantel. Steady, loud. I folded my hands together and let the quiet stretch. Philip smirked, mistaking silence for surrender. Philip leaned back, draped his arm casually along the couch. His smugness filled the room like smoke. "Clinging to this house," he said, "it's selfish. You don't need it. You're just one man. But we, Lillian and I, we could fill it with life. It's time to think of the future, not the past." His words struck sharp. Selfish. One man. I gripped the arm of my chair, fingers pressing into the worn fabric. My heartbeat thundered, but my voice stayed steady. "Selfish, you say?" Philip smiled thinly. "Yes, old men hoarding space and memories while the young are forced to struggle. What use is a big house to someone who can barely manage the stairs?" "Stop," Lillian whispered, but he pressed on. "You've had your time, Preston. Now it's ours. That's how life works. Generation replaces generation. Don't make this ugly." The words landed like blows, not because they were true, but because my daughter sat right there, her silence slicing me open more than his smug little speeches ever could. Tears slid down her cheeks. "Dad, please." "Maybe he's right. Maybe you'd be happier somewhere with people your age. Her voice broke. "I just want peace." My throat tightened. Seeing her cry, hearing her plead, that was the sharpest knife. Philip seized a moment, his voice silk over steel. "Listen to your daughter, Preston. She's thinking of you. We both are." I leaned forward, meeting his eyes, my voice low, controlled. "Don't you dare speak for her." For the first time, the smile faltered, just slightly, but he recovered, smirking again. "Anger won't change reality. You're an old man sitting in a museum of your own making. Time to let go before time takes it from you." Lillian sobbed harder. "Stop it. Both of you." She stood, her hands trembling. "I can't do this." She rushed from the room, the sound of her footsteps echoing through the hall. A door slammed upstairs. Now it was just him and me. The air hung heavy. The house seemed to hold its breath. Philip straightened his tie, clearing his throat. "She'll come around. They always do. Women want security. And I'll give it to her Once this house is mine. I sat back slowly, studying him. His confidence, his certainty, his belief that he'd already won. You know, I said quietly, you remind me of a man I once bought a car from. Smooth talker. Promised the engine purred like a kitten. Drove it home, and the damn thing died in the driveway. I learned something that day. Philip arched a brow. Oh, and what's that? I leaned forward, voice cold. Never trust a man whose smile comes quicker than his conscience. He chuckled. You think you're clever. No, I said, sliding a folder onto the coffee table between us. I know I am. His eyes flicked down. Inside, copies of deeds, the living trust papers Claire had drawn up, and, most importantly, documents linking Caldwell Financial to lawsuits, bankruptcies, and fraud. Walter's digging neatly compiled. I've already protected this house legally. Ironclad. You can't touch it. Not with tricks. Not with coercion. Not even with Lillian's tears. It passes directly to her, and only her, after I'm gone. The smirk slipped. I continued, my voice sharp as a blade. And you? You think I don't know about Caldwell? The lawsuits? The fraud? You think you can waltz into my life, into my daughter's life, without me pulling back the mask? His jaw tightened. I pressed on. You're not after family. You're after leverage, money, stability. You saw my house and thought you'd struck gold, but you forgot one thing. And what's that? He spat. I stood slowly, letting the weight of the house settle behind me. I built this place with my own two hands, and I'll be damned if I let a snake slither in and claim it. The silence stretched, thick as tar. Philip finally laughed, harsh, brittle. You think a few papers scare me? I'll convince Lillian. She loves me. She'll believe me over you. I nodded slowly. Maybe she would, if it were just me. At that moment, the front door opened. Firm footsteps echoed through the hall. Claire Hammond, my lawyer, stepped inside, a folder under her arm. Behind her, Officer Daniels, a family friend from the local police department. Philip froze. Claire's voice was calm, professional. Evening, Mr. Preston. I brought copies of the finalized trust, and Officer Daniels has a few questions regarding Caldwell Financial. Seems your name came up in an active investigation. Daniels crossed his arms. Funny coincidence, huh? Philip's face drained the color. This is ridiculous. I've done nothing wrong. I looked at him. Steady. You came here tonight thinking you'd take everything from me. Instead, you just lost everything you thought you had. From upstairs, soft footsteps. Lillian appeared on the landing, her eyes red from crying. She looked from me to the documents to Philip, and in that moment, I saw it. The realization, the mask slipping, the truth dawning. Philip, her voice cracked. Is it true? He reached for her, desperate now. Lillian, darling, it's lies. All of it. He's poisoning you against me. But she pulled back. Her tears flowed fresh. But they weren't for me anymore. They were for herself. For the love she thought was real, revealed as fraud. I spoke, my voice firm, final. This house stands. This family stands. Without you. Philip's face twisted, rage and panic warring. But he could see it. The walls closing in, the trap sprung. And for the first time since I'd met him, he had nothing to say. The living room was quiet, but it wasn't peace. It was a silence before thunder. Philip paced like a caged predator, trying to hold on to his confidence. His voice came sharp, desperate now. You think you can stop me with some papers and a lawyer? You're a lonely old man clinging to bricks and memories. You'll cave. They always cave. I leaned back in my chair, calm, fingers steepled. My silence was the sharpest blade. Lillian sat at the bottom of the staircase, her shoulders trembling. She couldn't look at him. Not directly. Not anymore. Finally, I spoke. You've underestimated me from the start, Philip. Thought I was weak. Thought I'd roll over. He smirked, though the cracks showed in his mask. And haven't you? I let the words hang, then smiled. A slow, steady smile that had nothing to do with humor. No, son, I've been waiting. The front door creaked open. Claire Hammond, my lawyer, entered with the confidence of someone who held the winning hand. Behind her, Officer Daniels followed, hat tucked under his arm. Philip froze mid-step, his face drained of color. Claire set a folder on the coffee table. Mr. Preston, the trust is finalized, legally binding. The house is untouchable. Even your son-in-law here can't touch a single brick without your consent. Daniel's gaze cut sharp toward Philip. And as for you, Mr. Caldwell, your name's come up in more than one fraud investigation. I'd be careful where you tread. Philip's lips parted, but no sound came. His throat bobbed, swallowing panic. Lillian whispered, "Philip?" Her voice cracked like glass. He spun toward her, desperation flickering. "They're lying, Lillian. All of them. Your father's poisoning you against me." Her tears fell fresh, but this time her eyes were clear. "No, you poisoned yourself." Philip's mask shattered. He lunged toward the documents, snatching at the papers Claire laid out. But Daniels was faster, stepping between them. "Careful," the officer warned, voice low. "Snatching evidence isn't going to help your case." Philip's voice rose, cracking with panic. "You can't do this. Lillian, tell him. Tell your father you love me. Tell him we need this house." But Lillian stood now, her tears drying to steel. "You didn't marry me for love. You married me for this house." The words landed like a hammer. Philip staggered back as though struck. His hands shook, his breath shallow. I stood slowly, the weight of years and memories pressing behind every word. This house was built with love, with sweat, with dreams. You thought you could steal that? No, son. You don't get to take what you never earned. Philip collapsed onto the couch, the arrogance gone, replaced by a hollow man scrambling for footing. I stepped forward, voice calm, deliberate. You thought tonight was your ambush, that you'd corner me, pressure me, and walk away with victory. But what you never realized. I leaned closer, my words sharp as nails. I went to the police weeks ago. I showed them everything. Your name, your dealings, your schemes. Every move you've made has been under their eye. Daniels nodded. We've had you clocked for a while. Caldwell. Tonight, just seal the deal. Philip's mouth opened, then closed. No excuses left. No masks. Just fear. Lillian's voice trembled, but it was strong. Get out. He turned to her, pleading, but her face was set. Get out of this house. Get out of my life. The room was heavy with finality. Philip stumbled toward the door, his suit wrinkled, his tie askew. No longer the smooth son-in-law, just a broken man stripped bare. The door slammed behind him. Silence. Then Lillian's sobs filled the space, raw and aching. I put an arm around her shoulders, steady, my voice low, certain. The house stands, Lillian. We stand. She buried her face in my chest, shaking. And as I held her, I looked around at the walls, the floors, the memories built into every corner. The house had weathered storms before. Tonight was just another. And once again, the house had won.